All righty, welcome to the weekend wrap-up show here on February 22nd, 2025. I'm David Thomas, Mr. Josh Blevins sitting here across from me. Josh,
Yeah,
we've got some in-depth stuff to talk about that's very interesting today. A
we
lot
had
of
a few
stuff
things
happened.
going on. This was a county business week. There was no
Yeah,
meetings in the city, but a lot went on in the county, and we're going to talk about them.
yeah, and we had some weather that
We had a
started
bit
a
of
week
weather.
off.
We
Yeah, we
did
had a
have
little
some
bit of
weather.
snow and some
Yeah,
real cold air.
yeah,
Fortunately, the kids only missed 2 days of school,
yeah.
and
Well, they were off Monday for President's
that's
Day
right.
already,
So
so
two for
yeah,
snow and one for that. So they
one
had
for
a long
President's Day.
week,
Yeah,
week off.
yeah.
Went back at it yesterday, which I guess some parents are happy to get the kids back in school. And
They probably are glad to have the kids
yeah,
out of the house.
yeah,
So
and we
yeah,
we typically don't talk about the weather here, but it was news this week, so
sure.
we'll throw
Yeah,
that in there before we take a break.
yeah,
Let's hear from our sponsor, and we're going to jump into what all you've been doing this week and
yeah.
some information to pass along to everybody. We're going to pause now and hear from our sponsor, Dennis Young Insurance. We'll be right back.
Get the results you want with the personalized service you deserve at Dennis Young Insurance Agency.
As a local independent agency, we offer coverage from several different companies, including Erie. So whether it's auto, home, life, personal, or business, we can find the right coverage to meet your unique insurance needs. And with a rate lock advantage, your rates won't go up as long as you do not change drivers, autos, or addresses. Contact us at Dennis Young Insurance Agency, insuring Shelbyville and surrounding areas since 19.
All right, welcome back to the weekend wrap up here on Shelbyville Now. Mr. Josh Blevins, tell us what's happened this week.
What's happened this week? Honestly, we only had one big meeting, and we're going to dive right into that one meeting. A lot went on. On Tuesday evening, we had the County Commission committee meetings, which these are our three standing committees where we have rules and legislative, we have the law enforcement, which has been renamed to public safety, and then we have courthouse and property. And normally we'd run them in sequential order, but there was a lot that happened in courthouse and property, and I think we're going to jump forward to that one first.
Okay.
Rather than bury the lead, we're going to start with the lead. So
Okay.
courthouse and property met, and the big thing that was on the agenda there was our old buddy, the $10.4 million bundle came up.
It comes
again.
up. It resurfaces.
It resurfaced. It raised its head from the depths, and I'm going to do a little mea culpa here. Back when we talked about the bundle after it passed, I thought, and I'd sat in a lot of meetings, and I was convinced that we were going to come in under that $10.4 million.
Yes.
And we were going to try to make ourselves look great and say, hey, look, we saved the county all this money, and then end up spending the money anyways on just a different project. So, and actually, if you go back and probably watched our show the week after the bundle passed, that's what we said on the show.
Right.
Well, we're almost a year later, and the exact opposite has happened. We have gotten some actual pricing on these bundle items, and we have come in over budget. So
imagine that.
Shocking, David. I know. We have come in over budget, and I am a little bit shocked because, and we're going to play some clips here and find out why, but I really did think that we were given a lot of numbers during this process. This goes all the way back to 2023. And it looked like we had overestimated what these were going to cost in all cases. And what we had not done is we had not done our due diligence and had not gotten bids on anything other than the school part of this. And if we'll just, as a refresher, the school part of this was the Liberty Wing,
right,
which was a little over $4 million. We have the Juvenile Center, which was about $6 million. We have a surplus building, $600,000. Public safety training range, $150,000 or so, and then we had the little ag center building, just $25,000.
Yeah, so there was going to be just
a little extension to that building. And actually, we've already heard about that ag center building. It, oddly enough, came in over budget as well. Remember, about a month or so ago, we found out that they'd found something when they went to do it. There was a pump that needed to be moved, and they're going to need some more money on that.
Yeah.
But in this case, let's start with the lower dollar item, the surplus building. We had borrowed $600,000 to build us a surplus building. And in the meantime, there has been a change in which we've covered extensively on several shows, where Vanderbilt Hospital has decided they will no longer house out-of-hospital deaths
Right.
in their morgue. So they have, as long as there's been a hospital there, which I think at some point we had a public hospital, did we not? I think
Yeah, Bedford County General. is what it was
we
called
had a
years
public
ago.
hospital, and then it went to private ownership, and it's ended up in Vanderbilt's ownership. And they decided they're not in the money losing business, and apparently
Yeah.
operating
Yeah.
a public morgue is not a money making
Right.
operation. So
Right.
they no longer take out of hospital deaths. Currently, if you die outside a hospital in Bedford County, you're taken to the old workhouse, and they have just a couple coolers there, and they put you on ice until they can get you to a funeral
That's
home.
unfortunate.
That's unfortunate, but that's
Yeah.
what's happening. So we're having to build a county morgue. So as part of this surplus building, they're going to put a county morgue inside it. And they have now done the due diligence, gotten bids and everything, and it's going to cost between $200,000 and $220,000 more than we borrowed. So we're talking $820,000. That's kind of reasonable. I mean, we didn't expect at the time that we borrowed the money for the surplus building that we were suddenly going to have to put a morgue in it. Initially, it was just supposed to be an empty open
Right.
structure, and we were going to put stuff in it that we were going to be putting on eBay or something and selling
Yeah,
off. So there was
change of plans.
yeah, it was change of plans. So, understandably, and $220,000, not a big number, not the worst thing in the world. I mean, not great. I mean, we wish we could do it for $600,000, but it just can't be done. So, but the other item, the bigger item, is our juvenile detention center, which was an item of much discussion back in May
Right.
and going back to 2023 and even before that. And we were given a lot of pricing information on that. And we're going to start with clip one. And let's hear what we heard initially on this juvenile center going back to 2023. Let me tell you what you're going to see here. This is when in 2023, the commission approved design and cost analysis.
Right.
That's very
2023.
important. 2023, there was a vote and they approved a cost analysis, which to me would mean let's go out and get some bids
Yes.
and do some due
Right.
diligence. 2024, they came back after supposedly doing that cost analysis and told us that they were estimating only $5 million. And you're going to hear in this clip twice, they told us $400 a square foot.
Right.
So let's hear the clip. Let's hear in their own words
So,
what we were told in 2023.
First part
and
is 2023.
Yeah.
Second part, 2024.
2024.
All right.
There's dates along the bottom of the video
All right.
as you
All right,
watch.
here we go.
All right, thank you. Next item under financial management is design and cost analysis phase for the Liberty School expansion, the juvenile detention center, and the surplus property facility. This would just be the action to allow these to go through that phase so we have the information. This is not an authorization to borrow money.
Juvenile facility, we have reduced the building from 10,000 square feet to 8,500 square feet. We currently have an estimated cost of $5 million, and that was at the 10,000 square feet. So we expect to be under that budget amount.
Okay. Right now, we're thinking that we're at about $400 a square foot.
That was our preliminary budget. We started with a budget, I believe, of $5 million. Is that correct? We hope to have that down to in the fours. I mean, I can tell you based on this right now, we're looking at $400 a square foot.
Okay, here we go. We've got the original talk of numbers here.
That was the presentation. That was September 2023. The county commission approved, I believe unanimously at the time, to do a design and cost analysis of these projects.
Right.
2024, they came back and said, hey, here's your costs. This is what it's going to cost you. In May of 2024, we had a very contentious county commission meeting
Right.
where they kept these items together in a single bundle. They had to vote on them because they couldn't get 10 commissioners to unbundle the items. And they were given dollar amounts on each of these with the assumption that there had been design and cost analysis done.
Right.
And the dollar amount on the juvenile center at that, you can go back and look at the minutes. It was $6 million exactly. And
Okay.
watching those videos at the time, which is why I thought everything we were told then, $400 a square feet, $5 million, we were told we're cutting square
Right.
footage
It'll be
off.
more like in the
It's going to be
fours.
more in the fours.
Yeah.
We're going to save money. We're going to look like a hero. So fast forward 12 months from those two clips. We're now February 2025. Nobody looks like a hero. We got egg on our face. We're not anywhere near that $4 or $5 million number. The actual number, which we'll play a clip in a minute, you're going to hear several different numbers in this clip. The actual number, as best I can tell, there's going to be a study session this coming Tuesday where we'll get something writing. Everything we saw this past Tuesday was only verbal. There was nothing
Right.
presented to anybody in writing. but the actual total number feels like it's going to end up over $8 million. And where I got that number was, I talked to Mr. Sweeney yesterday. I went to the meeting. I tried to reach out to our finance director. I believe he may be out of town on a conference. He didn't get back to me. But the construction costs, just construction costs alone, have ended up at $7.2 million. Plus, they're going to allow a contingency of another couple $100,000. So they're calling that 7.4. That construction cost does not include the architects, the attorney and loan costs, the owner rep, all these residual outside things. And those are going to add up to quite a bit. And as you'll hear in a minute, it sounds like the ask from the mayor and from the finance department is going to end up being, they're going to ask for $2.4 million additional dollars for this juvenile center, which obviously we've already borrowed 6. So you do 6 plus 2.4 on my calculator, that's 8.4. So that's where I'm feeling like we're going to end up at over $8 million on this facility. We'll dig in after the clip on why or why not we should be spending $8.4 million on a juvenile center. But let's go ahead and watch clip 2. This is a bit of a long clip. What we're going to hear from is we're going to hear from the architect at Klein Sweeney. He's going to tell us his involvement and where these numbers came from. We're going to hear from the mayor here. He's going to tell us about, we're going to ask for $2.4 million. We're going to hear something from the architect that I'll get back to in a minute, where he says he was just brought back into the project 5 or 6 months ago, which that's after the county commission had already approved everything. That's late. I mean, he should have been brought back in the project before there was ever a vote.
Right.
He's saying he got brought back in 5 or 6 months ago. Unless he was wrong on his calculation there, he was brought in too late. And then you're going to hear something that's actually a contradiction to the first clip. You're going to hear Mr. Sweeney say that he based his estimates on $750 a square foot. $650 a square foot, even though we just played you 2 clips where in 2024, they both he and the mayor said $400 a square foot. So there's some fuzzy math there. And then again, we're going to get a $7.2 million number. But here's a clip. It's a little long. It's about 2 minutes long. But let's hear from our architect, from our owner rep, and from our county mayor.
So again, in 2021, when the project was conceived, it was budgeted about $5 million. So if you look at it being shelved and then picking up this year or within the 5 or 6 months, we've experienced roughly 10 to 13% of yearly inflation. You guys know that from when you buy milk, you see the cost of gas. I mean, it's just what it is. So if you take a building and say $5 million for this much square footage and you add 46% to it, you basically increase that number to the $7-8 million range really quick, just with inflation.
Let me strip down for you what amendment it would be tracking based on this. It's about $2 million over what we targeted originally for the project. Now with a $400,000 contingency, or maybe it's 2.1 and a contingency of 300,000, but basically you're looking at 2.4. Okay, is where the latest.
And then we were rehired to put back up. We were asked to proceed with the project roughly 5 to 6 months ago.
So we had contractors give us square footage pricing. We didn't have plans yet. So we took the square footage pricing that we'd gotten from 2 or 3 builders, and they said it's running $650 a square foot. That's where we came up with the original number. So the number is 7.2. Bales has a $134,000 contingency in their number, which is split 80-20 on the savings, 80% to the county, 20% to Bales. I asked for another $100,000 contingency from the mayor. Because
unfortunately, you approved a number before you got a number, and that's what happens sometimes. But unfortunately, you approved a number before you got a number.
A number before we got a number, we approved.
Yes. So just to be clear, yes, we played that last part of the clip twice. Just in case you missed what he said there, that's Mr. Sweeney, who is our, not to be confused with the other Mr. Sweeney, this is a different spelling, Swinney, I believe, who is our county architect, who says right there on the tape, we approved a number before we even had a number, before you got a number, as he said. So even though in 2023, as we saw, the county commission approved for, finance and construction, whoever else, to do a design and cost analysis, the number they came back and gave us was not a real number. It was a guess. It was based on, which we saw there, it was based on an estimate of $650 a square foot, even though we were told at the time it was $400.
That's a big difference when you go per square foot.
Yeah, and actually the final cost of this, and I would say you got to include the architects and all these residual fees in there, at over $8 million is going to be even over the $650 a square foot number.
Oh, it will.
Yeah, I'm guessing, I think 10,000 square foot is a rough estimate still on the size. At that, you're looking at $800-ish a square foot. So we've come in way over. So back to the discussion that was had all the way back in 2024, do we need at this point now an $8 million juvenile detention center based on the needs of Bedford County to house juveniles in a detention center?
The conversation we had in 2023 and 2024 going into this specific project,
Right.
that got thrown in politically with a bundle with a school attached to it. Okay.
Right.
The debate was, do we need to get into the juvenile detention business because we're going to have to house outside occupants
Okay.
to make it cost
to be real
effective.
clear, do we stay in the juvenile detention business because we're already in the business?
If we stay in it,
Right.
is it feasible? It's a different conversation now because of the price increase. It's a completely different conversation.
I would think so. And just some numbers, and these are some of the same numbers that we had last year. Now, last year we were looking at a $5 million building. This year we're looking at about an $8 million building. And year to date on our current fiscal year, which started July of last year, we have housed, for Bedford County juveniles, we've housed 67 kids for a total of 492 nights. That's an average of 2.3 kids in our facility per night that we have to house
Right.
by law if we have a facility. These are Bedford County juveniles. Now, there have been more kids than that in our facility because we contract out to DCS and outside counties for a fee to help offset our costs. So I'm not saying we've only got 2 kids in there a night every night. Some nights we may have 8 or 10, but they're not our kids, and we're not legally responsible to house those kids. We're doing that as a service to help offset our costs right now.
And these 2.3 are from cases that originate in Bedford County.
They're from Bedford County.
Bedford
I will
County.
say just one month in particular, December, we housed a grand total of 4 kids in there for 12 nights. So in the month of December, we had multiple nights where we didn't have anybody Bedford County kids in there.
Okay.
So we're going to spend now $8 million on a building to house, 2.3 kids a night.
Right.
We're about to build a nice Hampton Inn. I'm thinking we could probably put each of those kids up in a separate room with an armed guard. And I would bet we could do it for less than $8 million for a lot of years. Just to guess. I realize that's not a realistic thing to do. But the backside of that argument was, which I got that again in a conversation I had yesterday, was we got this deal of if we don't have a facility, we got to go to Cookeville. We got to go to Memphis.
Cookeville, Murfreesboro.
Murfreesboro has a facility. And again, the argument was made to me yesterday. Their facility had issues. They had a lawsuit.
That was all done.
Back when they did the study here in Bedford County in 2018, 2019, 2020, Rutherford County was an issue. You could not have housed kids in Rutherford County at that time. There was an active lawsuit.
Right.
They actually had a bad judge there that was putting kids in juvenile detention for cases that didn't warrant detention is what was going on.
This judge got in big time trouble.
The judge is gone. The county mayor has taken over. They have a board that oversees that facility now. They can house 65.
They're open for business.
They're open for business. They're accepting
anybody
youth from
says
all over
otherwise
the state.
is not caught up to date on their facts.
Right. Those were the facts in 2018, 2019, 2020. The facts on the ground here in 2025 is they've got an open facility. They are housing youth from outside Rutherford County. They do it for a fee. It's not ideal. Sure, we'd like to have ours in the county, but again, at $8 million, that's kind of a little bit of a different discussion.
Yes.
You
can hire 2 or 3 extra officers to transport for a long time
for that kind of money.
Yes.
And also, we currently have a fairly decent size, and I didn't bring those numbers. We've got a decent size full-time staff already at our current juvenile detention center. If we weren't operating one, a lot of those people could be used, I would assume, for transportation.
Sure. And probably help our sheriff's department out, maybe do some SRO transfer.
Or that type of thing. So I'm not sure. And again, we may be too far down this road. We've borrowed $6 million already.
Why can't we just pay that back and start all over? Just that much? Can we borrow? Can we pay the money back?
Well, I mean, we can definitely pay the money back.
Okay,
So,
well-
but yeah, I think, and they have actually, well, I don't want to say that because I'm not sure. I want to say there's already been some dirt work done over by the jail, but I don't know if that's specifically for
We can
juvenile.
plant
That may
grass
be for
there.
surplus. we can plant grass, but we've definitely spent some money. And back to the architect, the gentleman there who's wearing the very nice suit there, his original portion of the juvenile center was $465,884. So I
To
should
draw
have
a set of
I
plans.
should have got into the field of architecture. I didn't realize architects did that well.
That's
And
5% now of our total cost. It was
Well,
probably 10% at
and
that time.
and as the price goes up, normally an architect is going to get a percentage. So I would assume his fee goes up with the higher price. So now I did hear that on Cartwright, he took a reduced fee
Right.
on that as the price went up. But either way, I'm just pointing out that architects do okay. So maybe you and I should have been
Okay,
architects.
so
instead of-
how about if we paid that back and then borrow money next time for a school instead of a detention center for 3 kids?
we definitely could use some schools.
Okay,
So,
one
yeah.
thing on this last clip that you pointed out that you put on there twice.
Yeah.
That argument was made by some of our commissioners and some people that voiced their opinions. Let's get a bid before we do this.
Oh yeah, that argument was made back in
A bunch.
2024.
And
yeah.
let's get a bid. Let's
Right.
know what we're doing here. And what did he say?
I believe he said you approved a number before you got a number. So, which we did, and now here we are.
Here we
So-
are.
So this Tuesday at 3:45, the Finance Committee will meet over at their office there. Where's it on Dover Street? And they're going to have a study session on where to come up with $2.4 million for this, plus the additional $225,000 for the surplus building. So we're talking $2.6 million. I've seen a few comments already online. Just to be clear on where the county's sitting financially, as we had discussed at the end of the year, at the end of December, we had $55 million sitting on our debt service account. So there's no way this should lead to any kind of a tax increase. We got plenty of money
Right.
in the world of construction that we could more than finance this. The question is it a good use of taxpayer money to now spend $8 million plus on this facility? So, and that's the one that both the finance department, finance committee, and then eventually the full county commission will be making possibly as early as next month's meeting, because I'd say the finance committee may come up with a plan on Tuesday and
Okay.
go ahead and push it on.
I think
So,
that when you're talking about taxpayer dollars, and we are talking about taxpayer dollars, this is just not money floating in here out of the sky.
now this didn't
Okay.
fall out of a
No,
plane.
this is taxpayer money.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's in debt services or whatever. It all is taxpayer money.
Right.
Whenever taxpayer money is used, the people that are paying the tax should have some say in it. And the way they do that is they elect a commissioner at the county level,
right.
2 commissioners from each district.
from
So
each
I
district.
have 2 commissioners. And I'm telling my 2 commissioners right now, I am not for spending $8 million to house 3 Bedford County juveniles. It's more cost effective to drive them to Murfreesboro. And yes, they're open for business. They're open for business. Okay. So everybody in the county should voice their opinions. If you think this is a wise use of my taxpayer dollar, your taxpayer dollar, then tell them to vote for it. If you don't think so, tell them you're opposed to it. We've got to start using some common sense.
And the best way to tell them is go on the county website, and it's got all 18 commissioners. It's got their email
Right.
address. I'd start with an email. And then, unfortunately, the finance committee meeting is at 3:45 on Tuesday. A lot of people have a real job and probably couldn't get there. But if you could get there, there's public comment at that meeting. And then whatever county commission meeting this comes up for a vote at, which I'm going to guess possibly the March one. It's possible finance won't be able to pull this
Right.
together in time, and it could push to April. But at some point, there will be a meeting where all 18 are going to have to vote on this. And you can come to that meeting and also give a 3-minute speech to your
Right.
commissioners on how you feel.
And I'm
So,
going to say this to our commissioners that are
Yeah.
there. A lot of you guys are afraid to say anything because you feel like, well, this is what the establishment wants done, so we've got to do this. It doesn't matter about the establishment. You represent the people, okay, which is a lot detached from the establishment.
right.
Okay. If you're sitting there and you're thinking in your mind, this is not good use of taxpayer money, you should say no or speak up and voice your opinion. And I want to encourage you guys that sit back and don't say anything to actually step up and say, you know what? This doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Let's figure out something else. Let's let's come up with a different plan because this is not wise use of taxpayer money. You can say that. I mean, and represent your people, because I guarantee you 80% of the taxpayers in this county would say this is not wise. This is not common sense to do this type of maneuvering.
Well, and what would be amazing is if at this actual county commission meeting where this comes up for a vote, which, this is just, a dream that's never going to happen. It'd be nice if all 18 commissioners said anything on it. I mean,
Exactly,
if they
yes.
wrote 2 sentences and said something, because we've got so many that sit there at these meetings and don't say a word other than yay or nay.
You just
or-
wonder
or
what
I'm
they're
president.
thinking. You
So,
wonder
yeah.
what they're thinking.
Yeah, it'd be nice if they would speak up and say something on this at the meeting, because this is an important issue. So, and I
Yeah.
think a lot of people are going to be concerned about it. So,
And
some of them may have the opposite opinion to you or me. They may be
they might
work in
think we
public
should.
safety, and they may think this is a good idea.
If you're part of the system, you're more than likely going to vote with the system.
Or even if you're not, if you feel like it's a good idea, say 2 sentences
Okay.
and explain why you feel like it's a good idea before you vote on it, rather than
But
just
their
voting
job
and
is not to say
Yeah.
what their idea is. It's
Well,
what
they
about
should
their,
represent their
exactly
constituents,
their
but-
constituents. So
They should let their constituents know why they're voting a certain way
right,
as well.
tell them
So-
I'm going to ignore you because I think I'm smarter.
Well, hopefully, that would be a little bit too much honesty, maybe. So
Okay,
I don't know
all
that
right,
we're going
okay.
to go there, but it would be nice if they would all speak up and just
Yes,
say a word
I
or two.
hope we
Even if
can-
they all spoke for 2 minutes, you're only talking a little over half an hour.
Exactly,
So,
and
yeah.
honestly, I hope we get more dialogue.
Yeah.
You started to see a little bit of it in this past meeting on some other topics. You did see
Right.
a little bit more dialogue. I hope we can have that dialogue on everything that involves this type of money. I mean,
Right.
really, it's a lot
Yeah.
of money.
Yeah, and we did. Yeah, in general, and we're going to go into the rest of the committee meetings now. This set of committee meetings ran longer than we have in a lot of months, and there was a lot of discussion, a lot more back and forth, and that's good to see. So, yeah, so we're now going to go backwards to the beginning of the meeting where we started with the Rules Committee, and they were discussing, we're not going to play any more clips. You can go and watch the video yourself if you want to, but what they discussed was some changes in the zoning resolution. They're looking at currently you can live, well, no, currently you cannot. Currently, RVs and campers inside Bedford County, it's not legal to live there permanently, but only based on building codes. They're looking at changing the zoning resolution to where RVs and campers not allowed as permanent dwellings based on zoning, which would put it then under the control of the planning and zoning people. They are going to allow temporary camping purposes for periods not exceeding 30 consecutive days without a permit, or up to 90 days within a calendar year if you get a permit from the zoning department. There are exceptions for caring for a disabled family member. You have to have a doctor's note for that. You can get a 12-month permit if you're doing that. You can also get 6-month extensions to that permit. If you live on a piece of property and your house burnt down and you have to have it rebuilt, you can get a permit for that. Can be anywhere from 12 to 24 months. If you buy a piece of property or having a house built, while your house is being built, you can get a 6-month permit with up to 2 more 6-month extensions. In addition to RVs and campers, this is also going to apply to mini barns and ready removable structures, which a lot of other people would also consider tiny homes would fall under that.
Okay.
Those cannot be used as permanent dwellings. So all that, let's break that down. Basically, they're saying any structure that doesn't meet building codes, the zoning and planning people don't want you living in the county. I've got 2 concerns with that, 2 different scenarios. Scenario number 1, which I think is one that you may be in agreement with me on. If I own 100 acres out in the county and I want to put an RV in the middle of my 100 acres, as long as it's got it's got to have appropriate sewer connection, like a septic, and electricity. I've got a hard time having the government tell me you can't live on your own property in your own camper,
Well,
and you're not bothering anybody else, and you're out here in the middle of nowhere.
Exactly. And
So-
that gets to, what does it mean? What does permanent dwelling mean?
Well, in this case, it means anything over 90 days. So
okay,
if you're living in
live
it,
91 days, that's permanent.
you'd hit the permanent dwelling phase.
Well,
at that point.
maybe I'm
So,
off and on with it, but honestly, this is
This is for people that are living in it year round.
well, I know
Yeah,
if I want to live in a camper on my property and I've got everything hooked up, I'm not hurting anybody. It's nobody's business.
That's where I have a concern. And here's my second concern. My second concern is here in the city, which this obviously is a county resolution. This won't affect
Right.
anybody in the city. I honestly, I don't know. I would imagine by codes, it's probably not legal currently to live in a camper in the sea. But I can tell you, and I'll give you a personal story. When I moved here, the first summer I was here in 2022, there was I saw an evening news article on one of the local TV stations. There was a mobile home, RV park, whatever you want to call it here in town, that the utilities had been cut off. And the residents of that park had been paying their rent. They weren't behind on their rent. It was the owner of the real estate that hadn't paid his bill to shovel the power, and they cut the lights and the water off.
And everybody was out.
Well, so they weren't out. What I found, I went in there. I got together with a pastor I knew out of Murfreesboro, and we went in there and tried to help them. I met 3 different family groups in particular. These are people that this is their last step before homelessness.
Right, exactly.
This was the only way. I met a gentleman that worked at one of the gas stations here in town. Nice guy, middle-aged guy, but he's, working at a gas station, don't pay a whole lot of money. So all he could afford was to live in his camper there.
Right.
I met a lady that was disabled. She was on disability, fixed income, could not afford rent anywhere in town. She had a son that had mental issues, and they were living in this RV trailer, and that was all they could afford. I met a family, a husband and wife, 2 kids in our county school system. Husband worked in the construction and landscaping business. All he could afford for his family was this RV trailer. They couldn't afford rent for a family of 4. These people, if they did not have those RV trailers, they would be living in a tent down by the river, or they'd be looking for a homeless shelter.
Okay, if government wants to to regulate this, then they better have a plan B for those type people.
Somewhere for them to go, or some kind of help, because I don't want us to be throwing, people that are poor and destitute out on the street just because we're unhappy that the trailer.
We don't like what it looks like.
It doesn't look good.
Yeah, it doesn't look good.
It doesn't look good. And I spoke to some people, I will say this week, that work in public safety on the other side of the issue, and that their issue was it's a safety concern. They've seen people killed in these trailers, a fire or something happens, or, they've got a heater running bad, it's poorly hooked up, and it kills somebody. But again, I can't see throwing people into homelessness. I mean, you make them homeless because you're worried they're going to die in a fire. It's a hard one for me. So I get codes and regulation, and I wish everywhere I drove here in town had a 1 acre lot and a brick house on it.
Exactly.
But not everybody can afford a 1 acre lot and a brick house.
But codes and regulations are to protect people outside of the person that you're citing. Okay.
Right.
This is like the seatbelt law, in my opinion. I mean, if I want to wear a seatbelt, and this argument can be made, I'll wear it. It's a smart idea to wear a seatbelt.
Yeah.
Okay. But
I do wear my seatbelt.
Exactly. All right. Yeah. So, but I mean, why not just let everybody use common sense there and make their own decision rather than making it a law where you have to wear a seatbelt? We're trying to protect you.
Yeah.
So we're going to impose a law against you. Same principle goes here. We're going to impose a law on you to protect you.
Yeah.
Okay. How about if you just let those people decide for themselves, as long as they're not intruding or hurting somebody else? Let's keep it in that box. Those folks decide to do that. We might not like what it looks like. We might think it trashes up the town, or we don't like the fact that they're living there, but it's their property. They're taking care of it. It's just another layer of government that is intrusive, in my opinion.
It feels that way. And I know there's a lot of, with a lot of these, I'm sure there's sewer issues, and we are not for you setting up in a field and dumping your sewer out on the ground. So you need to have, good
hooked up properly.
You need to be hooked up properly to septic or sewer, that kind of thing. But just, we need some more solutions for these people rather than just zoning them out of their own, their own housing. So, and, hopefully maybe they can work on that and come up with something else. I know they did say this particular zoning resolution, they've worked on it for the past 12 months, they said. So, and then just real quick on the tiny home side of it, I know that's kind of a trendy thing right now, the tiny homes. It was mentioned at that meeting, they've only found 2 tiny home manufacturers in a 5-state area that actually build those to where they meet building codes. I guess most of those, they've got like a loft, you have to climb a ladder. I guess that doesn't, because again, you're protecting them
yourself.
against falling down their own
Exactly.
ladder.
You know, if I want to climb a
So-
ladder to go to bed, it's my business.
Yeah,
you know?
but that doesn't meet code. So tiny homes are trendy. So this will put, a little bit of a
well,
a
and
burden
honestly,
on those as well.
it goes back to what you said. Sometimes that's all somebody can afford.
Yeah.
And in this day and time, a single person, young, just getting out into the world and starting their life, it's tough to pay $1,500 rent or
Right.
buy a house or whatever it is. And these are options that are coming, they're springing up all over the country, Josh,
Yeah.
all over the world, really.
Yep.
And we have to be nimble enough to understand that and figure out something.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just
Yeah. Okay, moving on. This was the same rules committee. This is kind of our third big item that happened at the county meetings. We had our friend Biff Farrer brought up that he feels like the county should establish a budget committee. We had actually talked about this, I think, a month or two ago. We're under what's called the 1981 Act. And under the 1981 Act, it says the county legislative body may authorize 3 additional committees if they so desire, a budget, an investment, or a purchasing committee. Mr. Farrer feels like, and I would agree with him, that investment and purchasing are not two big things that Bedford County's into, so we don't need those committees. But budgeting has been a bone of contention with some of the county commission with how the budget process has been happening here
Right.
in Bedford County. So under the 1981 Act, we're allowed to have a budget committee, which allowed to means the county commission is going to have to come up with 10 commissioners at least that agree with that and will vote to establish
and
one.
it's highly recommended by the state as well.
Well, there
From
was
what I
some,
understand.
yeah, there was some questions at the meeting by one of our county commissioners saying, "Hey, what would this committee do? A lot of, what's the point? What do they do? What's the structure?" If you go just a couple sections later in the 1981 Act into this is 521-110. This has a full, I got 2 pages here. It lays out very clearly how a budget committee works. On February 1st of each year, the budget committee, in conjunction with the director, prescribes the budgetary procedures. And then on March 1st, they do this. And then on this date, they do this. It's got a whole rundown of how this budget committee would work. It's real clear. There's the county commission doesn't have to invent this. This is already done. It's already in state law. The committee, basically just a quick rundown of what happens is each of the departments submits a budget to this committee. The committee then reviews the budget. They have the option to send it back to that department if they're not happy with the budget, say, hey, with notes saying, hey, we think you need to cut costs here. You need to adjust this. That gives them 10 days to that department to look at those notes. They can then send it back. The committee gets it again. They can even a second time send it back to the department. If, however, they do send it back either 2 or 3 times, I think it's just after the second time, and they can't come to an agreement with the department, then that department's budget just goes straight to the full county commission, and they get to vote on it at that point. But it's really laid out. It's really clear, and it helps, as Mr. Farrer brought up, we've got our old buddy Charlie Curtis, who works for the state, and he oversees all the county commissioners in the whole state of Tennessee.
Right.
And this was one of his recommendations because currently the way it works, our budget is overseen by the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee, as part of its membership, has our school board director, our road superintendent, and our county mayor, all of who are great people. But the budget, at the end of the day, the budget is voted on and approved by the county commission, not them. School board director in particular, who we love Dr. Garrett, but she's working on the schools. She doesn't have time to be going into the sheriff's budget and looking and deciding what they're spending on uniforms and stuff. We should have a committee that reviews the budget that doesn't have other obligations within our system. And also Mr. Clayton at the roads department, he's hopefully busy paving our roads. He doesn't need to be looking at the fire department's budget to
He's
decide,
got his hands full.
If they need more uniforms or
these department
equipment.
heads have their hands full, and
they have stuff going on, and that's why the state offers you this option of the 5-member budget committee.
Right.
They would all be county commissioners. Mr. Farrer even put forth 5 that he recommended who had financial background, 2 of whom are already on the finance committee. So you would get some overlap there. You'd have people that are already tied into finance. you would get 3 new ones that have financial background and know stuff about budgeting. One of who's been on the school board for a long, was on the school board for a long time
Right.
and knows a good deal about budgeting. And it would just help the process appear a little more transparent. It would get that workload off some of our department heads
Right.
who really should be doing department head things and not looking at budgets of other
Overall
departments. So
budgets,
it seems like a really good idea. They are going to bring it back up at next month's meeting. I think Charlie Curtis is going to try to come here and kind of explain from the state side how it
Right.
works. And I would hope we could get 10 county commissioners on the same page and get this voted in. I don't know if they have time before the next budget cycle, but it just, overall seems
It's a
like
good common
idea.
sense move.
It just
I
seems
think.
like common
Yeah.
sense. So, yeah. And then last thing, wasn't a big point, but the law enforcement, which is now called the Public Safety Committee, I noticed there was no drug task force report this month, but I had sent an article from Florida that I think you saw it as
Yes.
well. This week, we had a Shelbyville resident who was convicted in the state of Florida of meth distribution, sentenced to 11 years, 3 months in prison. And he was actually not arrested here in Shelbyville. He was arrested May of 2024 by the Florida Highway Patrol, which is just to say, as we already know, there is still a continuing drug issue going on in Bedford County.
Oh, yeah.
And it stretches outside of Bedford County. You had somebody cooking meth here, and they were driving their meth and selling it down in Florida. And we didn't catch them. Florida caught them. So, kudos to Florida for catching them. But we need to, local law enforcement needs to stay on the drug problem because there's, way too much going on.
There was also a story a couple of weeks ago. I think News Channel 5 in Nashville reported that there was a major arrest for some human trafficking, and it was based out of the Microtel in Shelbyville was one of the locations being used for that trafficking of a meeting point. So
that
to
wouldn't
speak.
surprise me.
And drugs were involved there as well. And TBI made arrest. I don't think they made arrest here, but they made arrest and there was connections to it. And that report was out, and it was pointed out to me by several people that sent emails to Shelbyville Now. Yeah. And I looked at that and saw the report, but it didn't come up anywhere around here because TBI did it. And but Shelbyville is in the hub of that area. And
right.
It's
well, and it's not just a Shelbyville, Bedford County. I mean, it's everywhere. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it's just a reminder to us to.
It would be interesting to see that DTF report every month. We've been trying to get that, and we have some.
Yeah, and they generally give it, and it was mentioned at the meeting. They probably
just,
will send it by
right.
email, a couple days
so
after. They just didn't meet the deadline.
I'd like to see how the enforcement's going on that. That's a good big part of our law enforcement now.
Yeah, and then one other meeting I went to this week, and it wasn't anything crazy, but I just thought I'd bring it up again because we've touched on it before. I went to the school board meeting Thursday night. And we got another attendance report, and we continue to be down in school students in Bedford County over last year. We are down 46 kids. We at this report this month, we had 8,770 K through 12 students and 241 pre-K students. We talked the last 2 weeks about the fact that just inside the city limits of Shelbyville, we had, because we got the numbers from Shelbyville Power, 316 new families, a net increase in families coming into the city. And that's not even counting out in the county. But somehow we're having less students in the school. So that's just an interesting trend.
We're having so that means more people are leaving than are coming right now.
Or more school-age kids. Yeah, because, I mean, there's still people coming. We had an increase of 316 families.
And our net result was less kids in school.
Is less kids in school. So just an interesting trend. We'll keep an eye on it, and not sure where that's going. But and that actually will affect our school funding because our school funding is based on those attendance numbers. So that could be we'll see what the new TISA number comes in at when that comes in a few months. Come budget time.
Yeah.
So, but with that is all we're going to cover from last week. We've got a lot coming up next week. Yeah. But before we get into that, let's hear from our sponsor one more time.
Get the results you want with the personalized service you deserve at Dennis Young Insurance Agency.
As a local independent agency, we offer coverage from several different companies, including Erie. So whether it's auto, home, life, personal, or business, we can find the right coverage to meet your unique insurance needs. And with a rate lock advantage, your rates won't go up as long as you do not change drivers, autos, or addresses. Contact us at Dennis Young Insurance Agency, insuring Shelbyville and surrounding areas since
Welcome back to the weekend wrap up here on Shelbyville Now. I want to thank everybody for watching today, and we see a lot of your comments coming in about all the different things that we've been talking about. We appreciate those comments, and I encourage everybody to reach out to your representatives if you have an opinion. Find out who they are and reach out to them. Voice those same opinions that you voiced here to those folks. They want to hear from you. Most of them want to hear from you, I'd say.
I think so. Yeah. Because I vote on city issues, and
Yeah.
the more input I have from my constituents, the better I feel, making a decision, knowing how they're feeling on it. So, speaking of which, this past week we had no city meetings, but this coming week we got some. Monday afternoon, evening, depending on how you look at it, the city council is getting together and we're doing a field trip.
Where are you going, Josh?
We are going to the Riverview District and doing a study session over there. That's the new area with Grindstone Cowboy and Glass Hollow. And what's the street? Is that Spring Street?
Spring Street. So that's called the Riverview District.
That is now called the Riverview District.
I thought it was just called Spring Street.
You just thought it was called Spring Street. That is the Riverview District. We're doing a study session. We currently are doing an expansion on the parking lot at the Fly. We're going to look at the construction work that's been done there. I think we're going to look at the progress on the Grindstone. We're going to look at all the great things going on at Glass Hollow. I'm sure there'll be, and this is, again, a study session. Nothing's being voted on, nothing decided. We're just going to look at it, see how it's going. I think we still have not had an actual vote and a final decision on whether or not to turn Spring Street into a pedestrian-only road.
Right.
I think that is going to happen, but that's not been decided yet.
Isn't it blocked off now? It's
Been blocked off because of
Grindstone
construction for months anyway. So I think that's how it's going to finally end up. But I think, honestly, they're also giving us food at Glass Hollow. I think they might be buttering us up because I think it's about time for phase 2, and I bet there's going to be money involved that they're going to need for phase 2.
So you're getting food, and it's going to be at 4 p.m.?
Well, the food doesn't start till 5, I'm told. So, yeah, we're touring for an hour.
Who's invited to this?
I think it's city council, and then I would assume, probably some department heads, and probably I know the Grindstone people are supposed to be there. The
local press not invited.
I guess local press is invited. I'm sure if you want to come on out and hang out, I'm sure they'd be glad to have you.
I'm just picking, Josh.
We'd be glad to have you. Tuesday, the Financial Management Committee is starting at 3:45, which is an unusual time because they're going to have that study session on where are we going to get the $2.6 million from. So I honestly don't know what solution they're going to come up with. My guess would be
borrow more money.
Yeah, I'm going to say it's going to be. The most logical one would be to borrow an additional $2.6 million. We've already got the money in the bank, but that's the deal with that debt service account. You can't just write a check from that account. So they have to borrow it on a short-term loan and then immediately pay it back.
I got a question for you, Josh.
Yeah.
Okay, so this has already been voted for in the bundle.
Right.
But we voted to borrow the money.
Correct.
And in lieu, we voted on that project based on that price that they were throwing out there.
Right.
Now that the price changed, don't you have to go back and reevaluate this project?
I would think there's going to at least be some discussion of reevaluation. Now, whether or not there's the appetite to shoot it down or whether or not they even have the ability to kill the project at this time, I do not know that for sure.
Well, the county commission could.
Oh, I think they'll definitely discuss it. So
okay,
I would hope they discuss it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would hope they discuss it. So, but that's going to be Tuesday evening or Tuesday afternoon.
That's kind of like me going to buy a car.
Yeah.
And I go in one day and I say, okay, how much is this car?
Right.
And they quote me a price on it. I say, okay, I think I'm going to get that.
Right.
But I'm going to come back next week. And then when I come back next week, it's gone up 30%.
Right.
And I'm saying, I'm out. Okay. Yeah. No negotiating, no voting, no anything here. I'm done because you went up on me here.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think if you're a county commission, you sit there and look at it, it's about the same type deal that's going on here.
Yeah.
Now we're talking $8 million. Wait a minute. My decision was based on the last price.
Right.
It's time to reevaluate.
It's possible. Another quick personal anecdote. Back when I bought my first house, I went to my friends at, I better not say the builder's name, but I went to a particular builder in December and looked at a house and we loved it. We were going to buy the house. We came back in January. The house price had gone up $5,000. So we didn't buy the house. We went with another builder. So you can change your mind sometimes.
Yeah, you can.
So, and price.
You could have said we're not going to build a house.
Right. Yeah. Well, in this case, we went with a different builder because we said we were just here a month ago. They're like, our price went up. I said, well, you just lost my business.
Yeah.
So I mean, you can go a different direction sometimes. So Thursday on the city side of thing, this one is one that's important to me. Planning Commission is meeting at 6:00 on Thursday. we're going to have a discussion that I've been working on since, I don't even know, December 2023, maybe, way before I was on the city council. This is going to be hopefully the first in a number of moves that we're going to make to change our zoning ordinance and increase our requirements for developers coming into the
Right.
city of Shelbyville. So we've talked about this so many times on the show. I've talked to people off the show, just in general. Part of the reason we're getting so much influx of people coming in and building is we have very low standards
Right.
on what we allow as far as density. We allow the houses being too close together. We don't require enough green space, a number of things. Two things in particular that are on this agenda that I hope we're able to get through and move through the city council is an increase in green space requirements on any development that is R3A or more dense. So anything that allows multifamily or anything, all PUDs, which is mixed use and the kind of neighborhood that I live in where it's different densities
Right.
and whatnot. Hopefully we're going to increase those green space requirements by a decent amount. And then the other thing that's on the agenda is an increase in the minimum side yard setbacks, so you can't put your houses too close together. We currently allow, and we have it in several neighborhoods now, where you can have houses 5 feet off the edge of your property,
Yeah.
which puts 5 plus 5 is 10. In my calculator, that puts houses as close as 10 feet together, which is both a fire safety hazard and just a general quality of life hazard.
Yeah,
You know,
really.
if you're a little further away from your neighbor, sometimes you
Yes.
might get along a little better with them.
Right.
So,
Sometimes
yeah.
a fence is a good neighbor.
A fence is a good neighbor as well. And if you're too close together, you can't squeeze that fence
That's
in there.
right.
So if you get them a little further back, get a nice fence in there, you might get along better with your neighbor. So that's happening Thursday
Larry,
evening,
I want
6
to
o'clock.
ask you this.
Yeah.
The last meeting, you really didn't get a lot done, I don't think, on that
That
topic.
growth,
all
that
right.
growth meeting.
So here's my
Yeah.
question. And since you're there, are there any talks about just looking at our city map and figuring out what goes where? Like R2 goes here, R1, that's the future map, land use map.
They have one of those, and every time something controversial comes up, they say, that's just a guide. That's not so important. Let's just do what we want.
It's a
And-
dadgum plan for
Right.
how we grow. That's
Yeah.
what it is.
And again, when you hit the controversial ones, they decide to go against it. And if it's just a non-controversial one, we follow the map. So I don't know. I'm not a fan of where the map's at right now. So I think it needs to be updated.
Can't that
for
discussion
sure.
take
So-
place? I mean, and this
Right.
this is what planning does. It's plan.
Right. Yeah. No, I think the discussion, and I think it is. I think Tom's doing a fairly good job there. He's our new planning director. He's been there maybe a year. So he's got a list of things he's working on this year. In addition to what we're going to do at this meeting, we've got a meeting coming up in a week or two where the next step is parking standards. We need to look at, we're allowing, and there's a couple of them that just recently been built. Some of these townhome developments, there's so few parking spaces that you just know by logically looking at it, these are neighbors that are going to fight later because they're going to be fighting over
Right.
parking. So
Right.
we need to fix that. He's got some neighborhood overlay things he's wanting to do where he set certain neighborhoods up to where currently I heard from Councilmember Feldhaus mention one of the recent meetings in his area where they've got bigger lots right now. He's got developers coming in there and carving off pieces of big lots and sticking houses, basically what used to be the front or backyard of another house.
Yeah.
So there's some overlay work that could be done there that could eliminate that, because that's not a good thing. And long answer to get to. They are working on it. As unfortunately I've found the longer I've been, which I've not been on the council that long, government moves way too slow.
Oh, gosh,
So
I know,
these are things. I mean, honestly, you could sit down in a room for a couple hours and probably fix a lot of these things
Oh,
if
yeah.
you could just do it.
Yeah.
But the speed it works, it doesn't work that way. It requires a meeting and then another meeting and then a study session, then another meeting.
Talk about the meeting.
Meeting you had, and then there's an email, and then there's a memo, and
Oh,
then and then it goes to planning department, then it goes to
Typical
planning
bureaucracy,
commission, then it has to get
Josh.
voted. Oh, it's crazy. So that's kind of how it goes. But again, we're going to make some progress at this Thursday meeting. I'm very optimistic we're going to do something. I hope so. And then Friday. This is a big one. You had you did a video interview yesterday on this with Mr. Paul Engel. That was
Right.
really good.
Yes.
If people want to go back and watch that. But Friday at 5:15 p.m. at the historic courthouse on the square, second
Yes,
floor,
second
there is
floor.
going to be a wastewater authority study session where the courthouse and property committee is going to sit down. They're supposed to bring in some experts on these type of wastewater authorities. The public is invited to put in public comment, and there's just going to be a discussion, a back and forth of, does Bedford County need a wastewater authority? If we need it, what's the language and the structure look like before the commission votes on this? Because they have to vote on this again in just a few
and
weeks.
again, it's
So
for the private act. They're asking
this is
permission
they're
for the private
gonna,
act.
if it were to go forward, they would have a document, a private act that would go up to the state legislature. The state legislature would vote on it, send it back to the county, and then at that point, the county commission has to ratify it by a 2/3 vote.
Right.
And then that private act becomes law. And then whatever the language of that private act is, they use to establish whatever this wastewater
Right.
authority is that they
So-
may or may not want or need.
So Friday, 5:15,
Friday,
second floor of the
5:15,
courthouse.
Second floor of the courthouse. So, and watch the video you and Paul did. You guys have a lot more information.
Yeah, Paul also sent a letter to the editors of a local newspaper. He also
Newspaper.
sent it to me.
Yep.
I posted that.
Yeah.
He gives his take on it from the legality standpoint and
Right.
constitutional standpoint. That's what he looks at is
Yeah.
government and law, and
Right.
that's
Yeah.
that's
So-
his expertise.
Yep. Yeah, that was good. And other than that, before we go away, I will just point out I don't normally wear a suit on the show or a jacket. I just happen to have an interview after this I'm going to. I didn't dress up for David today.
Well,
Normally I should dress up better for you, David. I
no.
should-
Just
you know,
stay.
so-
Let's keep it
Yeah.
laid back.
Keep it laid back.
Keep it
So
laid back.
yeah. I'm meeting a reporter after this for an interview, so that's why. And with that, I think unless you've got anything else, I think we'll be back here the same time, same channel, same place next week. To
On the weather front, we're going to have some warm weather coming in. That's looking good.
I hear 60s. This
60s
coming week,
this
so
week, so-
I like 60s.
We'll get a little break from the winter, and I'm sure it'll come back to bite us again. But
Yeah.
this week, enjoy it, y'all. Thanks.